January 20th was a major day in America. While it was also a holiday celebrating Martin Luther King Jr., the news was filled with the second inauguration of Donald Trump. Looking back at the inaugural addresses of the last few presidents since Obama first took office, Trump's address looks very different. Links to all their addresses are in the source file in the description below. As a side note, while most of these speeches were available as transcripts through the whitehouse.gov page, Biden's was curiously not. In clicking on the link for the speech on Google, I met with a 404 error page. This could be a legitimate error, but there is always the chance this was intentional. As I went to go edit in my computer to show exactly how I reached the error page, I found something even a little more disturbing. Now, instead of reaching an error page when I try to look for Biden's inaugural address through the White House archives, instead, it does not come up at all, and I cannot do searches within any archives to find his inaugural address. This could be because the presidency is transitioning. I fear it may be something else where maybe there's a beginning of an erasure of pieces of our history. Still, the speech was available through a German site, so I was able to read a full transcript. The general theme in all these speeches, including Trump's 2017 speech, was America needed to be helped in some way. Life was difficult for many, but the new president would help the nation grow stronger and better. Even Trump initially did not attack his predecessors, but focused on the general ills of the past and a better future. Looking back to a time of national turmoil after nearly 4 years of war, FDR did not attack anyone in his address, not even Hitler. Instead, he simply focused on working together for the future. Trump's address the other night was vastly different. Very early on in his speech, he began his attack on Biden's administration.
The vicious, violent, and unfair weaponization of the Justice Department and our government will end. Gathered today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair.
Trump went on to continue the rhetoric he has been campaigning on, such as the wokeness in schools, which aims to show white people as the villains of America.
And we have an education system that teaches our children to be ashamed of themselves in many cases, to hate our country despite the love that we try so desperately to provide to them.
While, yes, there have certainly been educators throughout America's history who villainize whites, most do not. Instead, most attempt to recognize and teach American history so current generations can learn from the past and grow. Slavery happened, folks. Institutionalized racism still occurs. Does this mean all whites are evil? Of course not. What is being taught is the system is broken in America, and all of history's woes have not been fixed. Take the time to learn and try to make the system better and truly equal for all. This is not wokeness. It's simply a call to treat all humans equally. As Trump continued his speech, it turned to attacks on him and how he has suffered. Yet God himself reached down and raised Trump up again.
Just a few months ago in a beautiful Pennsylvania field, an assassin's bullet ripped through my ear. But I felt then, and believe even more so now, that my life was saved for a reason. I was saved by God to make America great again.
Trump is not the first one to survive an assassination attempt. Reagan, who was Christian and professed a belief in God, never mentioned in his second address that he was saved from an assassin's bullet, which he was back in 1981. Trump also made certain to state exactly what he would immediately implement after the inauguration. His next steps would be very aggressive. 1. Declare a national emergency at the Mexican border which stops all illegal entry and deport millions and millions of criminal aliens, reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, end the practice of catch and release, send troops to the border. 2. Designate cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. 3. Invoke the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to eliminate foreign gangs and criminal networks. 4. Direct cabinet members to defeat inflation. 5. Declare a national energy emergency. 6. End the Green New Deal. 7. Revoke the electric vehicle mandate. 8. Overhaul the trade system to tariff and tax foreign countries. 9. Establish the Department of Government Efficiency. 10. Stop government censorship and bring back free speech. 11. Officially declare only 2 genders, male and female. 12. Reinstate any service members expelled from the military for refusing the COVID vaccine. 13. Protect soldiers from radical political theories and social experiments. Trump also promised to change the names of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America and return the name of Mount McKinley from what is currently, and has been for centuries, known as Denali. This is quite a lot to unpack and needs future videos to look into the topics more deeply. For now, let us look at the less restrained speech Trump gave at the presidential parade after the inauguration. Just before Trump was introduced, Steve Witkoff, special envoy to the Middle East, introduced the families of some of the hostages of Hamas. After Trump shook hands with them and briefly spoke to them, he took the podium, and after saying a few words about their plight, he shifted the conversation and talked about bringing home the J6 hostages.
And tonight I'm going to be signing on the J6 hostages, pardons, to get them out.
While these people stood there, who have real concerns over the safety of their loved ones, or are trying to recover the bodies of those whom they lost, Trump called for the release of hostages in America. The J6 hostages are approximately 1,500 people who were convicted of crimes during the Capitol riots on January 6, 2021. These included leaders who orchestrated the attacks and were then charged with seditious conspiracy. A number of the convicted rioters were found guilty of attacking law enforcement officers. These people went through the legal system, were tried, and found guilty of their crimes. They were not kidnapped and held hostage by terrorists. Their families know where they are. Jail, prison may not be the most pleasant place around and may not be necessarily the safest within. However, their families know what is happening to them. Their families have contact with them. To praise these criminals and call for their release in front of the families of real hostages was a great disrespect to real victims. While introducing his family, Trump made sure to point out there was rigging in the election, just like he claimed about the 2020 election. It simply would not be a political speech at this point if Trump did not focus on the election rigging.
They worked so hard. They knew there'd be rigging, but they said, we're going to make it too big to rig, and we did. We made it too big to rig.
The Democrats could have claimed the same over the 2024 election. However, they acknowledged Trump won. Trump fired up the crowds with claims that Venezuela and other nations around the world are intentionally sending their criminals and mental patients to America.
Anybody that would allow millions of people to pour through our borders from jails, prisons, mental institutions, insane asylums, gang members to be taken off the streets of Venezuela and deposited.
First, it should be noted there are supposedly estimated about 11 million illegal immigrants in America as of 2022. America's official population is about 334 million. According to a Pew report, illegal immigrants made up about 3.3% of America's population. While 11 million is a large number, in the grand scheme of things, 3.3 is incredibly small. ICE reported about 13,000 illegal immigrants were convicted of violent crimes in their home country. We do not know if they served time and then came to America, or if they were escaping punishment in their home country, just they were convicted at some point of violent crimes. This equates to 0.1% of the illegal population. That's less than a whole percent. And 0.003% of America's population. Of course, no one wants any criminals roaming free, but this is not the mass invasion like Trump paints it. Research has also found time and time again illegal immigrants tend to avoid drawing attention to themselves. They do not want to be deported. So even if they committed a crime in their country of origin, it does not mean they will commit a crime in America. It should also be noted those 11 million did not come over in 1 year, but this was the total number in 2022, after decades of moving to America. Also, the vast number of these illegal immigrants were actually once legal immigrants who simply overstayed their visas. These were people who went through official channels. They went through the process of obtaining a legal visa, be it for work, for education, whatever, for family reunification. and they simply stayed beyond the expiration date for a variety of reasons. Doesn't mean that they're hiding from the law because they're supposed to go to prison. Trump pointed out he is implementing hiring freezes in the government and will not hire any new IRS agents. Woo! The crowd cheers, because now we don't have to pay taxes. He also went on to state how IRS agents can use guns and talked about how agents terrorize citizens over their tips. Oh no!
And we're going to take the 88,000 people that they hired to go after you with guns. By the way, they're allowed to use guns and harass you like they were so many other people.
Well, yes, some agents do carry guns, but this is actually not the norm. Most agents work in an office and are not authorized guns. They are not banging down doors to scare people into paying taxes on their tips as a waitress or a bartender. While the Biden administration did set a plan in motion to hire around 87,000 new agents, they generally were not enforcement agents, but pencil pushers who were meant to audit, the wealthy. The Treasury Department guaranteed they would not increase the audits for those making less than $400,000 per year. This was after the IRS was able to collect more than $1 billion in back taxes from high-wealth taxpayers. Not the middle class, not the lower class, as many of Trump's followers are. In general, with lower numbers of agents, the focus has been on smaller audits, which targets lower-income taxpayers. Those who have the most to lose if they get hit with fines. However, with more agents, more complicated cases can be covered, and that will target the multimillionaires, the billionaires who are constantly evading taxes. The directive to fight inflation is, nothing more than lip service.
Directing every member of my cabinet to marshal every power at their disposal to defeat inflation and rapidly bring down the cost of daily life.
To date, the government has not encouraged inflation. We do not have government officials sitting in Congress, sitting in the White House saying, yeah, people should pay more for eggs. We need to triple the costs. Oh, people need to pay more for milk. This is wonderful. We need to put them deeper and deeper into the throes of poverty. No, the government attempts to fight inflation. That's just a given, because if it gets too bad, there's a very good chance that people will revolt if they're going hungry and starving. Trump telling his cabinet to fight it will not get anything done, and most of the cabinet positions have nothing to do with the economy and inflation. Secretary of Defense, head of the CIA, the head of the U.S. Department of Education, how are they going to fight inflation? It does not fall in their jurisdiction. So this is a very broad statement or a very broad directive that does nothing. It should also be pointed out that much of the inflation over the last 4 years has been due to outside influences. COVID disrupted production and daily life as businesses were shut down, some of whom never recovered and were completely shuttered. Russia's invasion then came, and after they invaded the Ukraine, this massively affected oil prices, which in turn affects production costs as well. Yes, America produces a lot of its own oil, but we still have a very interconnected world market. Then, once again, to combat some of this, he would begin drilling more.
And liberate our economy so we have more oil and gas than any country in the world, and we're going to use it. We're not going to do the wind thing,
rather than move forward with renewable energy. In addition to making jokes about the energy production of wind energy, he repeated the trope that wind farms kill birds and whales. Folks, even the Audubon Society, whose goal is the protection of birds, is not against wind farms. They have written articles about wind farms using various methods to prevent unnecessary deaths. They acknowledge that the wind farms are working to keep the birds primarily safe. Studies show wind farms kill about 150 to 330,000 birds per year. Fossil fuels, like gas and oil that he wants to drill for, oil kills about 0.5 to 1 million birds per year, considerably more than wind farms. Millions are killed yearly during olive harvests. Yet Trump is not calling for the end of olives on our tables. Scientific American also rejected that offshore wind farms were killing whales. The wind farms are not killing whales. Whales are usually killed from being entangled in fishing boats and collisions with other boats. The threat to whales from the wind farms comes more from boats traveling, or more boats traveling, to install and maintain these farms. It's not from the wind farms themselves. They're not sending out sounds that confuse the whales, that cause them to beach themselves. A big issue on the international stage is Trump stepping out of the Paris climate agreements.
But I'm immediately withdrawing from the unfair, one-sided Paris Climate Accord ripoff.
Now, the first one he did during his last term as well. His argument this time is that the Chinese claim America needs to work on climate change, while they do not. And Chinese pollution travels to American soil. You know what? The same goes for the reverse. Any pollution America produces, it travels around the world and affects other nations. His mention once again of imposing tariffs on foreign nations sets the general public up for even more financial hardship in conjunction with inflation.
Because tariffs are going to make us rich as hell. It's going to bring our country's businesses back that left us.
He claims that tariffs will bring jobs back to America and make the nation rich. The only ones who potentially profit from tariffs, quite frankly, are the wealthy business owners. Tariffs will not prevent foreign goods from entering America. The demand for foreign goods will remain. China is the largest manufacturer in the world currently, producing about 35% of the world's goods. Many of the raw goods for the tech industry come from China and simply cannot be found in large quantities, if at all, in America. This leads to a dependence on Chinese manufacturing, and they know it. Thus, any cost from tariffs, it's going to be transferred to the consumers. Companies in general have no desire to eat the cost when providing goods to the public. It hurts their profits. This does not apply only to China. Trump has already threatened high tariffs on Canada and Mexico as punishment for supposedly letting in waves of immigrants. He has also threatened to tariff Europe. High tariffs imposed on other nations will lead to retaliatory tariffs on American goods, thus hurting the sales of American goods overseas. And also, but a lot of our infrastructure for making stuff in America is gone. We have spent decades, starting from around the 70s, where we started outsourcing overseas more and more of our production. So we just simply do not have the factories in America to put people at work. And even if we did at this point in time, we are relying more on automation, which does not guarantee jobs. So tariffs is not the answer. All it does is it potentially hurts the general public even more and makes them even poorer. The claim that he will end government censorship on the American people. This refers to demands for oversight on social media. Heaven forbid we have oversight. We can get into the fairness doctrine that was demolished in 1987. It's a whole other issue for another day. Basically, there's been an uproar over social media sites fact-checking posts. In reality, most of these fact checks only consisted of a short note under posts with keywords stating essentially readers should check information about this topic. There has not been a thorough analysis over the content of the post. For the most part, these fact checks have not sat down and said what people are saying is wrong. They just say, question things and double check, like most people should anyhow. Much of this was in response to rebuttals of right-wing media posts about the 2020 election being stolen, and anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers during COVID saying about how they were being repressed and how this was all a scam and it was all lies. Which, medical professionals have found and proven again and again it was not. Then we have Trump's personal hatred for Jack Smith and the special investigation into Trump's crimes while in and after he was out of office. This played a role in the next part of his speech.
Deranged Jack Smith. You ever hear of him? Deranged. He's a deranged prosecutor. He's sick. They suck him on me.
Even though Trump was investigated, in the last few days, a judge has blocked all the court documents from being shared with Congress. So what are they going to do with this information? He's safe. That, tied with Trump's immunity, according to the Supreme Court, it is highly unlikely there will be any repercussions for the crimes he's committed. Even New York State, which found him guilty and said he was a felon for his hush money, There was no punishment. The judge essentially said, hey, you're going to have to live with the fact that you're the first felon to be president. Do you really think Trump cares? Hell, it's probably a badge of honor at this point with some. Look, I was a felon and I overcame it and still got to the highest office in America. One of the only things that it actually limits him on is he cannot own guns. We haven't exactly seen him running around with a concealed carry pass or a concealed carry license lately anyhow, so I don't think this really affects him. Oh, also the fact that he has Secret Service protection for his life. He doesn't care about the fact that he can't own guns. And as far as voting being revoked, he votes in Florida. Under Florida law, a felon can vote once they've served their time. As he had no time, he is automatically reinstated to be able to vote immediately. Again, this does not affect him. Trump acknowledged he was restrained on the topics he covered during his inaugural speech, but even then, he still attacked his predecessor. It is so disturbing that he goes on about the great reviews he is getting on that speech. Even already, he was getting great reviews.
Won't be unified like it is. It's so beautiful the way it is. And it is getting great reviews. You know, if I put things like that in, I'll get terrible reviews. One little paragraph that's a little bit wrong, the fake news goes crazy, right?
His job as the president is not to get great reviews. This isn't the 1980s or the 1950s and he's trying to get good Nielsen ratings. His job is to help the public, which really is concerning. What exactly does he think his job is? He's still looking at this as a TV event. He's not on The Apprentice anymore. He does not need to get good ratings. He needs to do his job. He needs to do what is best for the nation, for the people, not his sycophants that are insanely wealthy and benefit from a lot of the policies he puts into effect. He needs to look at the general public who are financially hurting. And it's actually kind of funny because at this point he compares himself to Alfonso Capone. Al Capone with all the subpoenas Trump was served with. Capone was finally caught and jailed, due to tax evasion. It was the IRS who caught up with him and placed him behind bars. This was a man who was responsible for orchestrating some of the bloodiest times and events in 1920s Chicago. In the end, it was armed IRS agents who put him away for life, the few who were armed. Maybe this is another reason the IRS should be well-staffed and able to do their job. Perhaps. Then the concept of signing executive orders in front of the masses in this giant arena is especially disturbing. Trump made a spectacle of government processes. This is no longer a solemn, deliberated job, but again, a ratings grab. The whole presidential parade this time has become just another rally to feed Trump's ego. He held up every signature and waited for the cheers. Then after he made his initial signatures before going to the Oval Office to actually do his job in private like he's supposed to, then he threw markers out to the public that he had signed with. It was like, I don't know, a Tom Jones concert, a Frank Sinatra concert, whatever. And there's the screaming female fans. And he throws his shirt or his scarf to them and they pass out and faint. And oh my goodness, I've got this. It's a spectacle. This is not the government. Okay, this is a lot, and it already took quite a while just to skim over the surface. So please check back here in the future as an historian and political scientist, and yes, I have degrees in these, advanced degrees, I try to make all that is happening in our world and news digestible. In the meantime, as Demosthenes wrote, shape your future.